Guy here with the Trauma Therapist Podcast. You know, when I got into graduate school several years ago, I knew I wanted to focus on trauma. I knew and felt in my heart that not only did I want to work with people in dire situations, but I felt I could do that. I was scared to do it, but I, for some reason, felt I could walk into that zone with them and be there with them and help them. And so that's what I did. I got to graduate school. I started focusing, let me adjust this a little bit here, started focusing on trauma. And I got into graduate school as kind of a non-traditional student. So I was 36, been out of school for 18 years. Had to go back. Well, that's another video. But so when I got into graduate school, I just wanted to absorb everything I could about trauma, what it would take for me to become the best trauma therapist I could be at that time. Books, articles, magazines, what professor did I need to speak to, planning my dissertation, who did I need to talk to, conferences, etc., etc., etc. And, you know, I had, again, come in with a lot of life experience to a certain degree, had been in therapy, blah, blah, blah. And when I got out of graduate school and got my first job, I was at a clinic in Northern California, and it was there that I got to see how many of these kids we were working with. We were working in a clinic with kids who were showing early signs of psychosis. And not surprisingly, 99.9% of those kids had experienced trauma of one kind or another. And it had gone unnoticed by the parents, by the teachers, by many therapists. And so, you know, part of the job there for us was to take referral calls from, again, therapists, parents, and teachers to see if their kid was right for this program. And, you know, we'd get this list of crazy behaviors these kids were doing, and maybe some were on medication, maybe some were doing drugs, maybe some had other diagnoses like, you know, depression and anxiety, etc., etc. But again, inevitably, there was trauma there. And so a week later, when this child would walk into our office, it would be just this kid. It would be this normal-looking kid with a book under their arm, sitting in the office, sitting in the waiting room. Maybe they had a tablet. You'd look at the paper of the referral call that you'd taken with all those behaviors and crazy behaviors. And sorry about that. Let me lower this. And you look at this paper with this list of symptoms and behaviors, and look at the kid. And that's a kid. And that was the moment where I said to myself, something has to be done. People need to know more about trauma. And that's when I started my podcast. I did not go on to become a licensed clinician. I left that job, which was amazing. By the way, I had an amazing time. But I wanted to create my own thing, my own business. I wanted to create my own podcast to help inspire other newer clinicians, therapists like myself at the time, and help educate them. Now, the goal initially was to interview, therapists, seasoned therapists, and find out how they were working. But things shifted. And they shifted because of a question that I asked. One of the questions that I asked, I had a list of questions that I would ask at that time. And one of those questions was, can you share an early clinical error, what you learned from it? Now, there were some therapists who said, I don't make errors, or I don't believe in errors. And there were others who I think got more to the heart of the question and did share kind of mistakes they made, slip-ups they made. And a lot of those had to do with them not allowing themselves to be themselves, not allowing themselves to be vulnerable in the moment. Yes, of course, within the umbrella of boundaries and ethics and so forth, professionalism. But there were many times where therapists, my guests, shared that they didn't allow themselves to be who they were. They didn't allow themselves to be human. They didn't allow, and so they weren't able to connect. They weren't able to be present and be creative, be in the moment, be spontaneous, allow the relationship to blossom. Now, I kept hearing that over and over and over again, and that really made me think about my own self and how I wasn't valuing my own individuality, my own uniqueness within the context of providing therapy for people at that time. I kind of felt like I had that dialed in, and what I really needed was the actual knowledge, the neurobiology and so forth. And yes, all of that is crucial. But what I've come to realize, and what I came to realize, and this really has shifted the arc and the tenor of my podcast and how I do interviews. What I really came to realize is it's this ability to be a human being. If you're a therapist or a coach, right? Now this kind of applies to everyone in general, but let's just talk about people in the mental health space. If you're a therapist or coach, this ability to be yourself, to be authentic and present, and I know we throw those words around a lot, but to be who you are is so vital, especially when you're working with people who've been impacted by trauma, when self-trust has been ripped from them, when the ability to be in the moment, the ability to be vulnerable has been stripped from their being, in a sense. When you're able to look, when we meet someone who is genuine, who is not worried about proving anything, who's just comfortable with themselves, alive with themselves, their uniqueness, we feel that, right? That to me inspires me, because it inspires me to be myself, to allow myself and all my idiosyncrasies and unique aspects to come forth. This is what my new program, It's Me Thriving, is about. It's about allowing ourselves to be who we are. It's about, and that sounds so simple, and it is, but it's not easy. Why? Because of cultural pressures, societal pressures, responsibilities, who we think we should be. You know, when I first started at graduate school, just got my degree, I was on fire. I was acting as the way I thought a therapist should act. And I wasn't just freaking being myself. So what I've wanted to do now, and what I'm doing, is creating a small group program. It's a coaching program. It's a three-month coaching program. And we're going to be meeting twice a month starting in August. So August, September, October. And we're going to be supporting each other. We're going to be encouraging each other to be ourselves, to take the next step, to come outside of our comfort zones. And again, this is going to look different for each of us, right? For everyone in the program. Authenticity is not some fixed point that we all move towards, right? We each have our own ideal of authenticity and genuineness and what that's going to look like. For some, it might involve more humor. For others, less so. For some, it might involve disclosing more about who they are and what they do. And for others, maybe that's not the case. But when you're in a group of people who are aligned with mission and the goal, and respectfully sharing with each other, supporting each other, there's nothing better than that, because you're in that moment and you're believing in yourself with support. Now, a part of this is going to require, looking at the story of our lives and that loop, the narrative we have going on in our heads. Maybe a lot of it's negative, maybe some not. But if that loop, and I think to a certain degree we all have a negative loop going on that we have to fight off. But this is going to be an opportunity to explore that and to change that and to even rewrite that. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, we're going to be starting in August. It's called It's Me Thriving, and you can learn more about it by going to my website, thetraumatherapistproject.com or thetraumatherapistpodcast.com, or by going to itsmethriving.com. Love to have you there. Take care.